they will want to deal with somebody that gives them a fresh chance to reset on trade, on tourism, and to take advantage of this moment.
Mark, thanks very much. Let's join our guest now, Xavier Zavare from Robert Mugabe's party, ZANU-PF, Zimbabwean journalist Georgina Godwin, and Miles Tendi, a Zimbabwean writer and academic who lectures at Oxford. It's very nice to have you all here. Georgina, I'm going to start straight away with you. What does it mean for your life now?
Well, it's extraordinary. This is the one goal that I've been working towards professionally all of my life. I hardly remember a time without Robert Mugabe. He has influenced every sphere of my life, and it's too big for words, almost.
Have you spoken to family, friends? You've been in touch with everyone back
I
home?
have, and they are absolutely elated, as am I, but with a note of caution. And I think that's something we all have to be very aware of. And I think it's really important for us to celebrate, and God knows we've had this coming for such a long time. But I do think this is, as Mark said, our moment, and we've got to seize the opportunity. I also think that it's incredibly important to honour the people that have got us to this point. Perhaps we even need a second wave of war veterans. We need to honour people in some way, because so many people have suffered. And the people in Zimbabwe who didn't eat today won't necessarily eat tomorrow. This is not going to change things overnight.
So when you say your note of caution, what are you referring to?
Well, of course, that everybody who is involved with ZANU-PF in any way is somehow associated with everything that Robert Mugabe did. They supported him until 2 weeks ago. Can a leopard change its spots? Well, we don't know. But as Mark said, there is this little window of opportunity. You have the international community watching. You also have, and don't forget this, that you cannot put the genie back in the box. You've got the people now who've tasted freedom, and the army too, who for once didn't have to oppress people.
Xavier, why should anyone in Zimbabwe now believe that Munangagwa is going to be any different to the man who he governed alongside as vice president for all those years?
I think there's a reason to believe in Munangagwa, in the sense that for the first time he will be able to come out of the shell and be himself.
He used to go,
the Munangagwa that we know is
the
a Munangagwa who is very pragmatic in terms of situations. He is also a very good listener in terms of everyone he works around with.
But he worked alongside Mugabe with the massacres, with the corruption. He was part of that government. Why wouldn't he do that now?
Well, he's got to have his own legacy away from Robert Mugabe. And he will have to work very hard for that. And that is a source of comfort for me, and a source of belief that he will want to do very well and do things differently. In fact, one of the challenges why he ended up having to run for his life was these arguments behind the scenes that he was having with Mugabe.
Amar, do you think that Munangagwa then becomes in charge of Zimbabwe, or is the army still in charge? Who pulls the strings now?
That's a great question, because I would actually like to move beyond personalities. This was done by the army, and I call the army a deep state. They were behind this. They're not going to go away. And there are important questions to ask as well. When Munangagwa does become president, is he really in charge? Or is it the army from behind the scenes that has virtually installed him that's running the show? So the institution of the army...
So you don't think he called on the army, you think the army called on him? This was a decision that came from the military?
He may have called on the army, or it may have been the military that done it, but the military did the work. And in that sense, he owes them. He's out of the country. While he was away from the country, the army did this. So because of that, I think they do have a significant hold on him.
Is that how ZANU-PF likes to see it now? That the army can bring him in, replace him? They may be calling the shots.
I don't think our defense forces would like to operate that way. In fact, the evidence of what we have seen is that they have tried as much as they can with this intervention to let the government function, to make sure the world understands that it is not a coup. They are just helping out a difficult situation. I don't think they would want to be seen continuing being involved. I think they will just go back to the barracks and remain as professional as they've always been.
Georgina, do you sit back and say, actually, you know, this is a change, and it's a change for Zimbabwe, it's a change for Africa. You use the army in a very peaceful way.
I think that the
it's
army...
not a coup.
I mean, that language had to be used in order not to stimulate regional fight back. But I think the army themselves, the rank and file, were out there having their selfies done with citizens. Those are their brothers and sisters, you know, and I think the army now has finally had that taste of being part of the crowd, of all of that joy, and I think that can't be stopped. And I also think that it's wonderful for us all to be here together tonight, because as Morgan said in the speech he made earlier today, we must go forward in hope and in joy. And I think that the only way forward is to say some terrible, terrible things happened. We acknowledge that. We've got to move on, and we've got to have some kind of unity.
It's really interesting how little recrimination there is. I was amazed when I spoke to Morgan Tsvangirai that he didn't want to talk about indictment. He didn't even want to talk about imprisonment. What happens to Mugabe now?
I don't think much will, because the people have replaced him.
So he'll be left to die an old man, essentially?
Yes, because the people who replaced him carried out his dirty work. So if you bring down Mugabe, it brings down Munangagwa as well.
And are there no Mugabe supporters left in Zimbabwe tonight?
Are they, sorry, what?
Are there no Mugabe supporters left in Zimbabwe? I mean, how does a man who's been held in power for 37 years suddenly have no one there on the ground who supports him?
It's not necessarily that he doesn't have supporters anymore, because there are a lot of people who still appreciate President Mugabe, or former President Mugabe, for what he did. Now, we of course must accept that he also made mistakes in his later years, but for what he did in the early years of independence, the education that he introduced, and the health that he introduced, and everything that he did for the black majority, will always be remembered.
But what happened wasn't a tailing off. It happened very quickly. It was just this fear of his wife, fear of Grace.
No, I think what happened, Mugabe did retain significant support on the ground, but because the process of his removal has been extremely militarized, there is great fear. So many of the MPs who went out to cast the impeachment vote were told to do so by the army and members of his own party to kick him out.
But they were worried that the wife would take over, wasn't it? There were all these quotes like, democracy is not sexually transmitted, and all these placards that people were holding up in the streets. Now, is this a misogyny? I mean, what kind of people can put up with a dictator who commits God knows what kind of atrocities for 30 years or more and then says no to the wife?
Well, ZANU-PF is an institution, and as an institution, as an organization, it has got how things are done, a way of doing things. And the way the wife was now doing things is contrary to what ZANU-PF has always been. Everything that the wife was doing is against the principles that we believe as ZANU-PF, against the constitution of ZANU-PF itself as an organization.
But also she didn't have war veteran credentials. I mean, I think that was it, is that you can get away with it if you are somebody who has liberated the country. She really didn't, and that was part of it.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Well, tomorrow it's Philip Hammond's turn to use long economic-y words. He may choose to keep tomorrow's budget simple. His task is to ease austerity with what little money he has at his disposal, and to sound less gloomy about Brexit than he may be feeling inside. The Chancellor will announce an education package of around 177 million to promote math skills, part of a drive towards productivity and learning, as well as a little bit more for teacher training. Perhaps the hardest challenge, though, for the government is working out how to bring young people voting in their droves for Corbyn at the last election into the Conservative fold. Here's Chris Cook.
I'll tell you what, I know you from somewhere. As we've got closer and closer to finding out what's in the